Welcome back to another class on Evean Hazaer Halacha series. We are in Siman Aleph in Halacha Yud. This will be part 10D of the Shi'ur. We are in Pitchi Teshuva Ot Zayin. We're going to begin with the words V'hu Zal Cholek. Before we begin, let me just give you a small introduction to today's topic. We're going to go against, the Nodah BeYehuda is going to disagree on what this Adam Gadol said yesterday. In the previous class, we saw that there was an Adam Gadol. He wanted to say that it is better to divorce a woman against her will than to allow the guy to marry a second wife. Now you have to recall, when the Chen Rabbeinu Gershom was enacted, the Chen Rabbeinu Gershom was done for two things. One is, you're not allowed to have a second wife on top of your first wife. But that Chen in reality expired at the 5,000th year. And it's only a custom now. But also you have another Chen from Rabbeinu Gershom, which is not divorcing a woman against her will, which never expired. It's still ineffective today. So what the Nodah BeYehuda is going to say against Adam Gadol, he's going to say, listen, I don't understand. How does you, the Adam Gadol, want to say yesterday that it is better to divorce a woman against her will and to transgress that Chen Rabbeinu Gershom than to allow him to marry a second wife and to transgress that Chen Rabbeinu Gershom? Because remember, according to the Chen Rabbeinu Gershom, when it comes to divorcing a woman against her will, that Cherem is in effect. There was never a time, it was never time bound. The Rabbeinu Gershom never said, you know something, up to 5,000 years, after then, it's expired, you can do whatever you want. No, it's still in effect till today. But the Chen of having two wives, it already expired. So how you Adam Gadol want to tell me that it is better to divorce a woman against her will than going and marrying a second wife? You are you are transgressing the words of Rabbeinu Gershom, where there are in fact today. You're making problems with that, versus of going against the Chen Rabbeinu Gershom, where it's only a custom. Now it's only a minhag by not allowing him to marry a second wife. Basically, what the Adam Gadol said was that it is better to divorce a woman against her will than to marry a second wife. Why? It doesn't make sense. The Chen Rabbeinu Gershom, where it's only a minhag, where by the second wife it's only a minhag, it should have been the other way around. It should have been said it's better to marry him off to a second wife than to divorce a woman against her will, because that Chen Rabbeinu Gershom, when it comes to divorcing, that Chen is more practical. It's still in effect. So let's try to see that today, Rabotai. The Pitchi Teshuva says, V'hu Zal Cholek. And he, the Nodah BeYehuda, Zechain L'Racha, he argues on the Adam Gadol. And he says like this, De be'emet yoter chamur gerushin ba'al korcham milisa acheret. In truth, it is much more severe, it's much more stringent in divorcing a woman against her will than from allowing a guy to marry another woman. Why? De bezeh lo kavah ha'gaon bazman klal. Because in this, when it came in divorcing a woman against her will, that one is not allowed to do that, he never established a time at all to when it's going to come to an end. That's why it is better to go ahead and allow him to marry a second woman. So if you're going to transgress the Chen Rabbeinu Gershom, you're only transgressing the minhag aspect. But over here, when you're forcing a woman against her will, you are transgressing the cherem aspect itself. We're still in effect. Nevertheless, Divrim Maharam Padava Nechonim. The words of Maharam Padava, they're correct. Because that great Adam, that Adam Gadol, that statement that he brought was from Maharam Padava. But his words are correct. So how can his words be correct if you just told me a second ago that it is better to marry another woman than to divorce a woman against her will? How can his words be correct? He just said the opposite. He said it is better to divorce a woman against her will than to allow him to marry another woman. So he says, let's break it down. He's going to tell you have two cases. Where a woman, she's overet al da'at, Or you have a woman who's not overt al dat, it's just she cannot have children. Dile'inin overt al dat, in regards to a woman who transgresses on the religion, adiv yoter legaresh, it is better to go ahead and divorce her, ba'al korcha, against her will, milisacher, than from allowing him to marry another woman. Why? Because maybe tachzor lemuta, maybe she's going to do teshuvah, ve'yu bet nashim kishiro, now he's going to have two kosher women. So over here he says, I agree with you, Maharam Padava, and over here you're right. In a woman's overt al dat, it's better to divorce her than to allow him to marry two women. Why? Allowing him to marry two women while you have a bad wife, what happens if she does teshuvah? Now you have two kosher wives. So now once you have two kosher wives, you are transgressing the Isser of the Chemra renegation, which is only the minhag aspect. Still, we don't want you to do that. It's a problem. Because it's not so partial to allow him to be with two women. But now when you divorce her, even though you're going against a real Chemra renegation, where you're not allowed to divorce a woman against her will, that's not a problem. Because when she's overt al dat, she's going against the religion. Get rid of her. So that's what he tells you over here. In regards to when a woman is transgressed under religion, it is better to divorce against her will than from allowing him to marry another one. Because maybe she's going to do teshuvah, and now he's going to have two kosher women. Aval, however, b'shahata yud shanim. However, what happens if you had a woman that she waited with her husband 10 years and they were not able to have kids? Yoter tov lahatir lisacheret. In this situation, it's better to allow the guy to marry another woman. V'shelo yadur ima rishona, and he shouldn't live with the first one. Umimelo lo teled, and it's going to come out that she's not going to have children. The first one's never going to have children. V'nimta, and it's going to come out hashniya beheter olamid. It's going to come out. The second one is always permissible to him. Aval legaresh ba'al korcha, but to go ahead and divorce the first one against her will because she can't have children. Shebezeh adayin lo kala chemra b'nei gershom me'or hagula, because in this case the chemra b'nei gershom never expired. Lo shomanas, that we didn't hear. So the Nodah BeYehuda is making a chiluk. When am I going to use the rule of Maharam Padava to say that it's better to divorce a woman than to allow him to marry another woman? That's only in a situation where the woman is transgressing, she's over al dat. But in a regular case where you have a religious woman, but she cannot have children, to go ahead and divorce her, no. Over there you're going to transgress the words of Rabbeinu Gershom, which is here, it's practical. It is better to go ahead and transgress the words of the Chemra Rabbeinu Gershom of the Mina concept. It's better that you should go that route and marry a second wife. Amnam, however, he says, all this that we're saying right now, that it's better to marry a second woman, that is according to the opinion of the Bash, where he says that once the Chemra Rabbeinu Gershom is no longer in place, we're going to tell you to go ahead and marry another woman, and you don't need 100 rabbis. Aval, however, he says, be'emet, but in truth, but don't push away the words of the Shev Yaakov. The heicha de lo pasha, that in a situation where a woman, she was not negligent, where she did not sin, where she didn't go against the religion, en lahatir lisa acher below kuf rabbanim. Do not allow the guy to marry another woman without 100 rabbis. Even though we're telling you right now that it is better to go ahead and marry a second wife than to divorce the first wife, that's only good according to the Bash. We're telling you that since the Chemra Rabbeinu Gershom already expired, you don't need no rabbis, it's only a custom, therefore we're going to be lenient. That's fine, that's only according to him. But according to the Shev Yaakov, he's going to tell you no. Still, even though the Chemra Rabbeinu Gershom is expired, and it's only in minhag, still minhag holds weight. You need 100 rabbis. So basically, what is the Nodah BeYehuda telling us? What is the Pirkei Shu concluding? That according to the Bash, the guy would be able, it would be better to marry a second wife than divorcing the first wife, but you don't need 100 rabbis. According to the Shev Yaakov, it is, you're allowed to marry the second wife, but only through 100 rabbis. Then to go ahead and divorce the first one against her will. Ubefrad, and he says, and especially, the harbe poskim srili, because a lot of poskim they hold the lo shaykh aidina bechul, that law is not applicable outside of the land of Israel. Meaning that law of waiting 10 years and not having children, where we said that a guy is able to go ahead and divorce his wife and go get married to another woman, that law is not applicable outside of the land of Israel. Means that you can't use that against your wife. So there's a whole thing behind it, Rabotai B'Lneder. Maybe we'll go, as we go along, we'll see it. But there's a whole concept behind it. Maybe it is the environment that she lives in. That's why she can have children. So that's why he cannot divorce her. Or if you cannot divorce and you're outside of Israel, you for sure need 100 rabbis. Okay, Rabotai, we're going to conclude over here. So bottom line, we saw here today that the machlokes between the Adam Gadol and the Nodah BeYehuda. The Adam Gadol is going to tell you that it is better to divorce a woman against her will than to allow him to marry a second wife. Nodah BeYehuda is going to tell you no. It is better to marry a woman, it's better to allow him to marry a second wife than to divorce a woman against her will. But he did agree with the Maharab Padawa, where is it better to divorce a woman against her will than to go ahead and marry a second wife? That's in a case where she's overt al dat. And then we saw that according to the Bash, you don't need 100 rabbis to allow him to marry to a second woman. According to the Shev Yaakov, you need 100 rabbis, especially outside of the land of Israel, where we don't hold this halacha that if a woman waited 10 years with her husband and she wasn't able to have kids, where we say that her husband is able to divorce her, in outside of the land of Israel, that law is not applicable. If that law is not applicable, how much more so you should have 100 rabbis signing off of the petition and saying that he's allowed to marry a second wife. Rabotai, have a great day. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen. Amen.